Maya Ellis drove with both hands steady on the wheel and the radio turned low. She had just left her mother's place with a small bag of leftovers. The dashboard clock showed 10:42 p.m. She planned to stop once and be home before midnight. A blue sign for a rest area appeared, and she took the exit. Tall lamps lit the lot. Maya parked under a light, locked her purse in the trunk, and walked to the vending machines. She bought a bottle of water and a pack of almonds, then returned to the car feeling more awake. As she opened the door, red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror. A patrol car rolled in behind her sedan and stopped. Another patrol car turned in and parked nose to nose with hers. Maya paused, water in hand. She felt her breath shorten, not from guilt she had done nothing wrong but from the pressure that comes when a simple moment turns uncertain. A sergeant stepped from the first car, broad-shouldered, slow and firm. A younger officer moved to the other side. The sergeant pointed toward her license plate, then came to the window and tapped the glass. "Good evening," Maya said, lowering the window and keeping both hands on the wheel. "Is there a problem?" "Plate light," he said. "It's dim. Hard to read your tag from the road." "I didn't realize," she said. "Thank you for letting me know." "License and registration." "Of course." She handed them over. "I'm driving home from visiting my mother." I stopped to stretch. He did not answer. He stared at the cards a beat longer than felt normal. The younger officer circled the car with a flashlight, the beam sliding over her hands. "Any weapons in the vehicle?" the sergeant asked. "No. Any drugs?" "No." "Step out of the car." Maya blinked. "I will step out." "May I ask why?" "Step out," he repeated, louder. She shut off the engine, set the keys on the dashboard where he could see them, and opened the door. She moved slowly, the way she had trained herself to move in tense moments. The young officer kept the flashlight at shoulder height, drawing a bright line across her face. "Face the vehicle," the sergeant said. "Hands on the hood." Maya did what he asked. The metal hood was warm under her palms. She told herself to breathe evenly and to make a clear record in her mind, each instruction, each step, each word. "What is the reason for this?" she asked. "You said my plate light is dim. Is there anything else?" "Stop questioning me," the sergeant said. "You were slow to comply." "I complied as soon as you asked," Maya said softly. "I just want to understand." The younger officer gently turned her so they could pat the front of her jacket. "Feet apart," he said. "Anything sharp on you?" "No." The sergeant spoke into his radio, giving her name and plate number. He asked where she was coming from and where she was going. She answered plainly, no extra words. When he asked what she did for a living, she paused. She could say it and change the night, or wait and see how they would treat her. She chose to wait. Across the lot, a traveler with a backpack leaned on a rental car, phone up, recording. Maya did not look at the phone, but she felt its quiet presence. The radio came back with her information: no warrants, valid license, clean record. The sergeant's jaw moved. "You were moving around inside the car when we pulled up," he said. "I reached for my water," Maya replied. "My hands were on the wheel when you came to the window." He told the younger officer to handcuff her for safety. The word landed like a cold drop of rain. The cuffs clicked, not tight enough to hurt, but tight enough to remind her who controlled the next few minutes. She kept her shoulders down and her voice steady. "Officer," she said in the same calm tone she used at work, "I will follow every instruction. I believe I have already done so." "Disorderly conduct," the sergeant said, as if testing the words. He nodded toward the second officer, and they guided her to the patrol car. The traveler took a few steps closer, still recording. Inside the patrol car the air smelled like cleaner. The plexiglass divider threw back a small ghost image of Maya's face. She thought of her mother, probably asleep now with the television on low. She thought of the oath she had sworn 2 weeks earlier, to be fair, to be patient, to listen. At the station, they booked her in a plain room. The younger officer removed the cuffs and returned her belongings to a tray. He read a short list of charges. The sergeant signed a paper and left without looking at her. "Do you want to make a call?" the younger officer asked. "Not right now," Maya said. "Please explain the next steps." He explained the citation, the time to appear, and the option to contest. His tone softened. "Thank you," she said. They released her just before midnight. The night had cooled. Her car sat under the tall lamp, pale as if it had been waiting. She opened the door, put her bag on the passenger seat, and sat for a minute with the engine off. Her hands were steady again. She could drive home. She could call a friend. She could also begin the careful work she knew she must do. At home, she turned on the kitchen light and took out a notebook. She wrote the date and time. She wrote the location and the look of the rest area. She wrote the names from their badges as she remembered them. She wrote the words that were said, as close as she could, and noted where pauses fell. She included that a traveler recorded the scene. Every few lines, she stopped to breathe. She did not write to praise herself. She wrote to make a clear record because memory can blur by morning. When her notes were complete, she opened her laptop and sent a short message to the presiding judge and the court clerk. Something had happened. She had been cited. She would file a formal complaint in the morning. She would recuse herself from anything related if it ever reached her courtroom. She did not know yet how tangled tomorrow would be. She only knew that honesty now would keep tomorrow steady. Before bed, she checked her phone. A friend had sent a link. The traveler's video was online. It did not show everything, but it showed enough: her quiet voice, her hands open on the wheel, the command to step out, the cuffs catching the light. Comments gathered under the clip. Maya watched it once. Then she put the phone face down and turned out the light. The image on the screen and the memory in her body did not match perfectly. No video can hold all the small things a moment contains. But the record would help. She lay in the dark and thought of the law as she always did, not as a weapon and not as a shield, but as a path with rules about how we walk. She would take that path in the morning, step by step. She would bring her notes. She would speak in simple words. She would be clear about what happened and careful about what she could not know. The clock on her nightstand slid from 12:17 to 12:18. She let herself rest. Outside, the rest stop lights would still be on. The road would still lead home. Tomorrow would come in its own time. And when it did, Maya would meet it as she had met this night, awake, steady, and ready to do the next right thing. Morning came with a pale line of light under the curtains. Maya woke before her alarm. For a few seconds she forgot the night before. Then the memory returned like a film played without sound: the lights, the orders, the cuffs, the ride. She sat up slowly and placed both feet on the floor. She told herself out loud, "Today I will be clear. Today I will be calm." She made tea and opened her notebook from the night. She read her notes once, then once more. She added small details she had missed: the make of the patrol car, the height of the lamp near her parking spot, the shoes the younger officer wore. She wrote down the time stamps from the booking papers and checked them against her phone. She wanted her account to be careful and fair. Her phone buzzed with a message from the court clerk: "Good morning, Judge Ellis. Hope you're okay. Call me when you can." The words were soft, but the subtext felt heavy. Maya called back at once. The clerk's voice was kind. "There's a video online," she said. "People are talking. The presiding judge is aware. We'll handle the phones." "Thank you," Maya said. "I'm writing a formal complaint. I will send it to Internal Affairs this morning." I've already notified you and the presiding judge about the stop. I'm prepared to recuse from anything related. The clerk took a breath. One more thing. The district attorney's office called at dawn. They are reviewing. If they file charges today, the first appearance could fall on your calendar by rotation. I wanted you to know. Maya stood at the window and watched the street. I appreciate the heads up, she said. If that happens, I will make a disclosure on the record and offer to step aside. If both sides agree that I may handle only the first steps for safety and schedule, I can do that. Otherwise, it should transfer. Understood, the clerk said. We'll prepare for any outcome. Maya ended the call and sat with her tea. She felt two currents moving in her at once. One current was personal, a quiet ache where the cuffs had rested, a small rush of fear that returned like a wave. The other current was professional, a hard line of duty that did not bend. She knew she had to keep those currents separate. She dressed simply in a navy suit and low heels and tied her hair back. Before she left the house, she called her mother. She did not describe every detail. She only said there had been an incident, that she was okay, and that there might be news. Her mother listened, then said, "Do what is right and stay steady. I am praying for your steadiness." The word steadiness felt like a soft stone in Maya's palm. She carried it with her out the door. The courthouse steps were already busy when she arrived. A few reporters stood by the entrance with notepads. One held up a microphone and asked a question that blended with the morning traffic. Maya nodded politely but did not stop. Inside the building, the air felt cool and ordered. She loved that feeling, the hum of printers, the smooth click of shoes on tile, the low voices that came with serious work. She went first to her office. On her desk lay the docket for the day. Next to it was a message from the presiding judge asking her to stop by. She walked down the hall, passing framed photos of past judges. Some faces looked stern, some kind. She wondered how many of them had faced a morning like this one. Perhaps none. Perhaps more than a few. The presiding judge, a thoughtful woman with silver hair and calm eyes, stood up when Maya entered. "I'm sorry this happened to you," she said. "Thank you for telling us right away." "Thank you for your support," Maya said. "I've prepared notes for disclosure if the case lands in my courtroom, but I intend to recuse from all substantive matters." "That is appropriate," the presiding judge said. "We've contacted Judicial Ethics Council. They agree you may handle only a very limited first appearance if both sides consent and if it is necessary for order and safety today. After that, transfer at once. If either side objects, you should step aside immediately." Maya nodded. "I will follow that." A staff attorney came in with updates. "The DA is filing charges this morning," he said. 2 counts each, misconduct and false report. The initial appearance is requested today due to public interest. The rotation places it in your courtroom at 2:00 p.m. Maya felt the room go still for a breath. She had known this could happen. It felt different when the time was real and near. She thanked the staff attorney and returned to her office to prepare. She wrote out a short script in plain words. It began with transparency. She would say on the record that she had been stopped by the defendants the night before, that she had filed a complaint, that she could not and would not hear any motions or make findings beyond what was needed for safety and schedule. She would offer to step aside at once. If both sides agreed that she could handle the first steps today, identity, rights, counsel, and release conditions consistent with policy, she would do so and then transfer the case to another judge. She reviewed the local rules on first appearances. She pulled 3 recent cases that looked similar on paper, not in facts, but in category, so that her conditions would match normal practice. She also reviewed the police department's standard policy for officers under investigation. She wrote down a few key lines to help her speak simply and stay consistent. At 11 a.m., The DA requested a brief meeting in chambers with defense counsel. Maya agreed, but only for logistics. When they arrived, she kept the door open and the court reporter present. The DA explained that the city was watching closely and that a timely first appearance might calm the day. The defense lawyer said his clients would prefer a different judge but would accept a limited first appearance if it moved the case forward without drama. Maya thanked them both and confirmed that she would make a full disclosure on the record. She repeated that she would not make findings beyond standard first appearance steps and that the case would be transferred afterward. Both lawyers said they understood. After they left, Maya asked her clerk to post a note outside the courtroom door, "Please silence phones. No recording inside. Respectful silence during proceedings." It was the same note used on days with high interest. It was not special to this case. That was the point. Around noon, her phone showed more messages. Friends sent brief notes of care. A mentor judge sent a single line, "Your only job is fairness, the rest is noise." She saved that line in her notebook under her script. Her mother texted a heart. Her niece, who was in school, sent a string of star emojis. Maya smiled for the first time that day. She ate a simple lunch at her desk, soup and a roll from the courthouse cafe. She did not check the news. She did not count the comments below the video. She focused on the pages in front of her and the people she would face at 2 o'clock. At 1:30 p.m., the bailiff came to the door. "The gallery is full," he said. "Mostly quiet. A few cameras outside. We'll seat them and keep a clear aisle." "Thank you," Maya said. "Please remind everyone that we are here for the law, not for a show." She walked into the empty courtroom to test her breath. The wood smelled faintly of lemon oil. The flag stood still. The judge's chair looked larger than usual, as if the day had stretched it. She did not sit yet. She placed her hand on the bench and spoke out loud to the empty room, the same way she spoke to herself at home. "We will do this step by step," she said. "We will use simple words. We will be fair." Back in chambers, she reviewed her disclosure one more time. She underlined the point about consent and limits. She also underlined the word respect. She wanted to set a tone that would bring the temperature down. She knew some people in the gallery would be angry. She knew some would be defensive. She could not carry either feeling. Her job was smaller and harder than that. It was to keep the path clear for the next judge by being exact in this moment. At 1:55 p.m., she put on her robe. The fabric felt familiar, like a steady weight on her shoulders. The bailiff opened the side door to the bench. The courtroom buzzed and then, as if a dimmer switch had lowered the sound, grew quiet. "All rise," the bailiff called. People stood. Maya took her seat. She looked out over the room and saw faces she did not know and faces she did. She did not search for the traveler from the rest stop or the person who had posted the video. She focused on the counsel tables. She began with her disclosure in a clear voice. She said who she was. She said what had happened. She said that she had told the court and had filed a complaint. She said she would not hear the case beyond this first step, and only if both sides agreed. She asked both lawyers to state on the record whether they consented. The DA said yes. The defense said yes, for today only. She repeated their agreement and noted that the case would transfer at once after the first appearance. Then she called the case. The two officers walked in with their attorney and stood at the table. They wore dark suits and looked down for most of the time. Maya did not look at them longer than she looked at any person before her bench. She kept her face calm and her voice level. She asked each defendant to confirm their name and to state whether they had received the charging documents. They said yes. She asked if they had counsel. They did. She read the rights in plain terms: the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, the right to a fair trial before a judge or jury, the right to see and challenge the evidence, the right to a presumption of innocence. She paused after each right to make sure the words could land. She did not change her language from any other first appearance. She reviewed the standard factors for release: community ties, risk of harm, and duty status. She did not discuss the facts of the night. That would belong to another room on another day. She set conditions that matched the local rules and the comparison cases in her notes: no contact with named witnesses, no direct or indirect contact with the complainant, compliance with department policy while the investigation was open, and no carrying of service weapons off duty until the internal review made a determination. She set a modest bail that matched guideline ranges and the current charge level. The defense lawyer asked to be heard on the weapon condition. He said his clients had long records of service and posed no risk. Maya listened, thanked him, and replied in the same even tone, "I am following the standard approach used for similar cases involving public safety employees under review. Consistency is one way we show fairness." She asked the clerk to set a transfer order. She named the next judge on rotation and the date for the next hearing. She made sure everything was typed and clear. She asked if either side had anything further on logistics. They did not. The bailiff called for the next case. The gallery began to breathe again. The sound rose a little and then fell. Maya looked down at her script. Her underlines had done their job. The pieces were in place, ready to be handed off. After the officers and the lawyers left, Maya sat for a single extra minute. She felt the two currents in her again, the personal and the professional, and noticed that the second had guided the first through the hour. She took off her robe, folded it over the chair back, and stepped into chambers. The clerk closed the door behind her. Her phone buzzed. It was her mother again, asking if she had eaten. Maya smiled. "Yes, Mom," she typed. "I ate. I'm okay." In the outer office, the staff whispered in careful tones. A bailiff brought in a copy of the transfer order for her file. The hallway outside buzzed like any weekday afternoon. Paper moved. People moved. The city moved. Maya wrote a short memo to add to the record, listing the steps she had taken and the limits she had set. She kept the language simple: who consented, what she did not do, and the transfer details. She placed the memo in a folder labeled with the case number and wrote "initial appearance only, recused from all else" on the tab. She looked at the clock. It was 3:10 p.m. The hardest hour of the day had passed without drama. It was not a victory. It was not a loss. It was a job done with care in a narrow lane. Outside, the sun had moved to the west side of the building, filling the hallway with a warmer light. There was still work to do. Other cases waited. Other people needed the same attention and the same plain words. Maya gathered the next file. She took a breath. She walked back to the bench, ready to give that same steadiness to the next person who stood before her. The courthouse felt different the next morning, as if the walls themselves were listening. Maya arrived early, carrying a folder with her notes and the memo she had filed after the first appearance. She liked the quiet hour before doors opened, when the halls were still and the day had not yet asked for anything. She poured coffee, sat at her desk, and read through the emails waiting for her. Most were routine. One stood out. It was from Internal Affairs. They thanked her for the prompt complaint and asked to schedule a recorded interview. They also asked if she would share any personal photos or dashcam footage. She had none of that, but she had her written notes and a careful memory. She replied with times she was available and asked them to confirm that an ethics liaison would be looped in because she was a sitting judge. They responded within minutes, "Yes, of course." She closed the email and looked out the window at the slow rise of daylight. She did not feel anger, she felt focus. Focus was quieter than anger and, for her, stronger. It kept her mind steady on the narrow steps that built a larger truth over time. She opened the folder, read the lines she had written on the night of the stop, and underlined a few small details she wanted to remember in the interview, the way the sergeant had paused after the radio check, the exact words for safety, the location of the second patrol car, the traveler with the backpack, the time she was released. At 9 o'clock, the clerk tapped and walked in with news. Judge, the police department is releasing body camera footage to the DA this morning. They may make a public version later, with faces blurred. The DA also says the younger officer's report differs in tone from the sergeant's report. They're checking that. Maya listened without surprise. Often, in tense moments, people remembered what they meant better than what they actually said. Reports could reflect that. Thank you, she said. Please print any public statements for the file, but I won't watch or comment on videos while the investigation is open. I'll share my account as a witness only, and only through the proper channels. The clerk nodded. Understood. She hesitated at the door, then added, a woman called and asked to leave a message for you. Her name is Rena. She says she was the traveler who recorded the rest stop scene. She didn't ask for anything. She just said, tell the judge I posted because I thought it might protect her later. Tell her I'm sorry this happened. Maya felt warmth rise behind her eyes. Please thank her, she said, and ask her to share her contact with Internal Affairs. Her video may already help them, but her direct statement matters too. The morning moved in its normal rhythm for a while. Maya handled a landlord-tenant case, a driving matter, and a small claims dispute about a phone repair. She spoke the same way she always did, slow enough for understanding, clear enough for record. Each ruling rested on the law and the facts in front of her, not on the world outside the door. She took comfort in the shape of the work. The bench taught her that fairness is built in small bricks, one after the other, not in grand speeches. Around noon, her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Internal Affairs had scheduled her interview for 3 that afternoon at a neutral office. She would have a short break between her court calendar and the interview. She ate a quick lunch, a salad and half a sandwich, and reviewed the ground rules with the ethics liaison on the phone. Speak to your experience, the liaison said. Avoid opinions about discipline or about the case now that it is filed. If they ask anything outside your direct knowledge, say you cannot speak to it. I can do that, Maya said. It is how I work every day. As she walked to the interview site, she noticed a few posters on a community board near the elevator, a legal clinic, a book club, a flyer for a neighborhood meeting about traffic safety. Ordinary life continued while attention swirled around one moment. She held onto that. It kept things true. The interview room was simple, a table, 3 chairs, a glass of water at each place, and a small recorder at the center. The Internal Affairs investigator, a quiet man with careful eyes, greeted her. The ethics liaison sat beside her. The investigator explained the process and pressed a button on the recorder. He asked her to state her name and role. She did. He asked her to tell, in her own words, what had happened at the rest stop. She told the story from start to finish in plain terms. She did not change her voice when she reached the moment of the handcuffs. She did not lean on adjectives. She gave times, distances, and words, and when she could not be exact, she said about. She mentioned that the younger officer's voice had been steady and that he had explained the booking steps in a respectful way, because that detail belonged in the record, too. When she was finished, the investigator thanked her and asked a few follow-up questions. Did she feel unsafe? I felt uncertain, she said. The moment moved faster than it needed to. Did she at any point tell them she was a judge? No, she said. I chose not to share my job in that moment. Why? She paused, then answered as she had written in her notes, I did not want my role to change the treatment I received, and I did not want to risk an argument about it. He nodded and made a note. The interview ended in under an hour. She signed the summary sheet that the investigator printed. As she slipped the pen back into her folder, the investigator looked up and said, "I appreciate the way you spoke about both officers." His voice held no angle, just a plain tone. "Details matter." "They do," she said. "Thank you for listening." Back at the courthouse, the late afternoon light warmed the long hallway. A messenger had taped a notice on the public bulletin board, "Community Forum on Fair Stops and Safe Streets Friday evening, all welcome." The forum was not a court event. It was hosted by a local group and a small business owner who had given space. Seeing the notice, Maya felt a tug to go and listen. But she knew she could not attend while the case was active. She was part of the system that would handle it. She was not a free citizen in this context. She reminded herself of that line and walked on. On her desk, a small envelope waited with no sender name. Inside was a handwritten note from a retired officer who now volunteered at the courthouse. The note was only 4 sentences long. "I saw the video. I do not know every angle, but I know your work. Thank you for being calm in a hard hour. I hope the process helps the city learn." She placed the note behind a photo of her niece that sat at the corner of her desk. Kindness could be a quiet anchor. That evening, at home, Maya reheated the soup her mother had sent. The house was quiet. She washed the dishes and then took a short walk through her block. Neighbors watered plants. A dog barked once and then settled. A boy practiced free throws at a hoop attached to a garage. The ball made a hollow rhythm on the pavement. The sky held that soft color between day and night. She breathed it in. When she returned, her phone buzzed with a single message from her niece, "Are you okay?" Maya called at once. Her niece's voice was small from somewhere between homework and bedtime. "We learned about fairness in social studies," the girl said. "The class talked about the video. Some kids were loud about it. I didn't know what to say." "You do not need to argue with anyone," Maya said. "If someone asks, you can say we are letting the process work. You can say your aunt is okay, and that she believes in rules that treat everyone the same." Her niece was quiet for a second. "I like that," she said. "I can say that." After the call, Maya sat at the kitchen table with her notebook. She did not add new facts, there were none to add. Instead, she wrote a short line to herself, like a note one leaves on a mirror for the morning: "Stay small enough to be exact, strong enough to be kind." It was not the law. It was just a reminder for the next day. The next morning, the DA's office released a short statement. The body camera footage showed the exchange at the window and the order to step out. The public version blurred faces and names. The statement did not argue, it only said the investigation was ongoing and asked the public to reserve judgment. The police department posted its own message about policy, training, and the review process. The city's news sites put both statements side by side. At lunch, Maya stepped into the small courtyard behind the courthouse. A reporter stood near the gate but did not cross in. He called, "Judge Ellis, do you have a comment?" She shook her head and kept walking. Comment was not her role. Her role was steadiness. That was hard enough and, in her view, precious. In the afternoon, she met with a group of new clerks for a training session that had been on the calendar for weeks. She considered canceling. Then she decided the best way to be herself was to do what she had planned. She talked with the clerks about how to read a file, how to prepare a docket, and how to greet people who were nervous or upset. She told them to use simple words. She told them to avoid saying always or never, because most problems lived in the space between. She did not mention her own case. She did not need to. The lesson was the same in every context: do the next right thing in front of you. Late that day, a staff attorney brought in an update she had not expected. The younger officer had asked his union to assign him separate counsel from the sergeant. It was a small line on a page, but it said a lot. It suggested the two reports might soon stand even farther apart. Maya felt a shift in the room, like the small change in air that comes before rain. She did not feel triumph. She felt the same words she had written in her notebook, exact. The path ahead would not be about sides. It would be about narrow facts, weighed by someone else, in some other room. That was how it should be. That night, after work, she drove back to the rest stop. She did not go because she needed to relive the moment. She went because she wanted to stand under the same bright lamps and turn them into a place of peace again in her mind. The lot looked calm. A delivery truck idled near the edge. A family walked their small dog. The vending machines hummed like distant bees. She parked under the lamp, stepped out, and looked up at the simple blue sign that pointed drivers to a clean bathroom and a place to stretch. She put her hands on the hood of her car, not out of fear this time, but like a person greeting an old friend. She stayed there a minute. The night air felt cool on her face. When she drove away, she saw the interstate rise ahead of her like a long ribbon, steady and known. The turning point had come, she realized, not in one dramatic instant, but in the set of choices she had made each hour, to report, to disclose, to limit her role, to speak plainly, to remember kindness, to trust process. She did not control the outcome. No judge does, not outside the matters assigned and not beyond the rules that shape them. But she could control the shape of her own steps. And that shape, if she kept it careful, might help others walk with more ease after her. On her porch, she paused with the key in her hand. A light from the kitchen spilled across the floor. She thought of the traveler, Rena, lifting her phone not to make a scene but to protect a record. She thought of the retired officer who wrote with a steady hand. She thought of the younger officer who had spoken politely during booking and the choice he had just made to seek separate counsel. She thought of her niece, who would tell her class, "We are letting the process work." Maya smiled, unlocked the door, and stepped into the soft light of her home. The day had been long. The road ahead would be longer. But she had found her turning point and placed it where she could reach it, in small, honest actions, done with care, one after another, the way a true life is built. The day after the interview with Internal Affairs, the city seemed louder. It was not only the traffic or the voices outside the courthouse. It was the feeling that many people were talking at once, each with a picture in their mind of what had happened and what should happen next. Maya parked in her usual spot, took the stairs instead of the elevator, and repeated the small line she had written to herself, "Stay exact, stay kind." On her desk lay a neat stack of papers from the court administrator. The top page was a short statement prepared for the public, a clear timeline that said the case had been transferred to another judge immediately after the first appearance, that Judge Ellis would have no role in any future decisions, and that the court does not comment on pending matters. It was in simple language, free of posture. Maya thanked the administrator. The statement would not stop every rumor, but it would give people something true to hold. Soon after 9, her clerk came in with a careful face. "There's chatter," the clerk said softly. "A few posts online say you humiliated the officers yesterday. Some say you went too easy. Some say too hard. It's like two radios on different stations at once." Maya nodded. This was the fallout she had expected, though it still felt strange to be the subject of it. "Please print anything official for the file," she said. "We won't respond to opinions. We'll keep doing our work." She moved through her morning calendar: small claims, a dispute over a fence, a payment plan for court fees, each case an ordinary piece of life that needed attention. She used the same tone as always, asked the same clarifying questions, and looked people in the eye when she spoke. The news could whirl outside. Inside, the room should feel steady. Near noon, the presiding judge stopped by. "JCC sent a notice," she said, referring to the Judicial Conduct Commission. "Standard practice, given the attention. They want your written response on the assignment and the limited role you took." It's routine, but we'll treat it with care. Maya felt the small, tight pull in her stomach that comes whenever her integrity is questioned, even in a routine way. She kept her voice even. Good. I've kept a clear record. I'll prepare a packet, the rotation sheet, the consent from both sides, the transcript of my disclosure, the transfer order, and the comparison cases for conditions. Perfect, the presiding judge said. We'll add the Ethics Council's opinion to the packet. Try to get it out today, so we close the loop. After lunch, Maya sat with her binder and built the packet step by step. She wrote a short cover note, who she was, what happened, what she did and did not do. She listed times and attached each document. She used simple sentences and avoided adjectives. She pretended she was writing instructions for a person who would read them years later, with no video and no noise, just a question: did the judge do her job the right way in a hard moment? She wanted the answer to be plain. As she worked, the court's public phone line lit with calls. Some were supportive. Some were sharp. The administrator handled them with the same line: the court follows its rules. The case is before another judge. Maya was grateful for the team around her. Fairness was not one person's work, it took a small crowd of steady hands. At 2 o'clock, a staff attorney knocked with a new update. The younger officer, Carver, has asked for separate counsel and hinted at cooperation, he said. The DA might seek a limited protective order to keep certain details from spilling into the press before a hearing. That motion will go to the new judge. Maya listened and made no comment. The shift was notable. It meant the two reports might soon diverge further. It also meant the city might hear more half-facts, more guesses, more heat. She reminded herself of her lane. She was a witness to a single night, a judge in other matters, and a citizen in everything else. She would not step outside those lines. On the way home, she stopped at the grocery store for tea and bread. In the aisle, a man she did not know glanced at her, then looked away, then back again. He spoke a little too loudly. Must be nice to be the judge, he said. Bet you showed them who's boss. Maya heard the words and felt the old urge to explain. She did not take the bait. Sir, she said gently, the law is the boss. Have a good evening. She put the tea in her basket and walked on. At the register, the cashier, a young woman with shy eyes, leaned in and whispered, I saw you on the news. I hope you're okay. Maya smiled. I am. Thank you for being kind. That night, the community forum took place at a local cafe. Maya did not go. She could not go. But after dinner she clicked a short video clip posted by someone in the audience. She watched without sound first, then with sound. A small business owner welcomed the crowd. A retired officer spoke about training. A mother spoke about how to teach her teen to respond at stops. Then Rena, the traveler with the backpack, took the mic. Her voice shook at first and then steadied. I recorded because I wanted a record, she said. I didn't know she was a judge. I just saw a person trying to do the right thing and felt that a record would help later. Maya closed the video and sat quietly. She felt grateful to be living in a city where people would come out and speak to one another without shouting. The next morning, her packet to the Conduct Commission went out with a cover letter from the presiding judge. It felt good to send it. The commission set a brief interview for the following week. It would be professional, not hostile. Still, it was a confrontation of its own kind, another room, another recorder, another test of how well she could separate feeling from fact. Midweek, the new judge held a review hearing in the officer's case. Maya did not attend. Later, she read the public minute entry, conditions remained in place, with a reminder that the investigation was ongoing. The union held a press conference on the courthouse steps. A spokesperson said they supported due process and stood by their members. The courthouse kept quiet. The court statement from the day before continued to do its useful, boring work. By Thursday, the swell of attention began to move like a tide after a storm. It did not disappear. It just pulled back a little. The courthouse halls sounded more like themselves again. On her break, Maya walked to the small window near the end of the corridor and looked out over the city. She saw delivery trucks, a bus, a man unlocking a bike. She liked the way ordinary life refuses to stop for a headline. That afternoon, a letter arrived from a law student group requesting that she speak about courage on the bench. Maya smiled at the title and shook her head. She replied with thanks and a promise to visit after the case was complete, and to speak not about courage, but about process, bias training, and the simple sounds of fair hearing. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor, I don't know. The group wrote back a kind note. They said they would be honored to host her whenever it was proper. At home that night, her mother called. "How is your heart?" her mother asked, as she always did after a hard week. Maya laughed a little. "Tired but steady," she said. Her mother told her a story from years ago about a day when a neighbor blamed her for something she had not done. "I did not shout," her mother said. "I swept my porch. The broom told the street what I believed." They both laughed at the image. Maya pictured herself with a broom on the courthouse steps, sweeping words into neat lines. Friday morning brought a different kind of confrontation. Not a hearing. Not a letter. A face. As she walked into the courthouse, she saw Officer Carver standing near the security checkpoint with his new attorney. They were waiting for a separate meeting upstairs. He saw her, too. For a second, everything in the hall paused, his step, her breath, the sounds of keys. He did not look angry. He looked young. He lifted his hand, not in a wave, but as if unsure what to do with it, then let it fall. Maya gave a small nod, the same nod she offered to any person she passed in a courthouse hallway. She did not look back. She did not need to. She had already put her words where they belonged, in a report, in a transcript, in a packet. The rest would belong to other people. That afternoon, she had a calendar full of family cases. A grandfather petitioned for visitation. A mother and father worked out a school schedule. A teenager asked for a second chance at a diversion program. These rooms carried their own kind of heat. She kept her voice warm and her rules clear. When the teenager spoke about a mistake, Maya leaned forward and asked, "What is your next good step?" The girl thought for a second and said, "Call my aunt tonight." Maya smiled. "That is a good step. Take it." As the week ended, the Conduct Commission sent a short email, "We have your materials. Interview confirmed Tuesday at 10 a.m. Maya blocked the time on her calendar and printed the packet again to mark with tabs. She would tell the story one more time, not as the person in cuffs, not as the judge at the first appearance, but as a public servant explaining her choices to another part of the system. It was a quiet kind of confrontation, with no cameras and no crowd. These were the rooms where trust is either built or lost. On Saturday morning, she visited her niece's school for a book fair. Children ran between tables with paper crowns and sticker sheets. A few adults recognized her and offered a soft word. One woman asked a question that might have turned political. Maya smiled and said, "Today we buy books." She helped her niece choose a slim novel about a girl who learns to fix bicycles. They ate muffins at a folding table. Her niece looked thoughtful. "Auntie," she said, "my teacher says process is slow on purpose. Is that true?" Maya nodded. "Slow is one way we keep it fair," she said. "It gives everyone time to speak and time to think." Sunday afternoon, she sat at her kitchen table with her notebook. She wrote a new line, "Fallout is weather, it passes. Character is a building, it stands if you check the beams." She read the line twice, then closed the notebook and called her mother. They spoke about the week and about the stew her mother was making. They did not speak long. They did not need to. Love, like law, is sometimes best in plain words. On Monday, she walked back into the courthouse through the same doors as always. The badge buzzed. The guard nodded. Papers moved across desks like small boats on a calm river. The case that had touched her life would go forward without her. The room she did sit in would keep filling with people who needed the same careful attention, the same simple language, and the same small courage it takes to be fair when no one is watching. That was enough. That was the work. And even in the week's bright glare, she had kept that work at the center, step by simple step. Weeks passed in a pattern that felt both ordinary and new. The city's noise settled. The courthouse returned to its low hum. Maya kept her calendar full and her words plain. She did her job. She watered her plants. She visited her mother on Sundays and brought soup home in small containers. In the middle of that steady life, the pieces of the case moved forward in rooms where she did not sit. One morning a white envelope arrived on court letterhead from the Judicial Conduct Commission. She read it at her desk with the door half open. The letter thanked her for the timely disclosure, confirmed that her limited handling of the first appearance followed ethics guidance, and found no violation. It noted the consent of both sides, the immediate transfer order, and the clear record she had kept. The words were dry by design, but to Maya they felt like a hand placed gently on the table, solid, quiet, enough. She put the letter in the for the record folder and exhaled in a way she had not realized. She had been holding her breath. A week later, the DA filed a revised charging sheet. Rumor became record. The younger officer, Carver, had chosen to cooperate. His new lawyer filed a notice stating he would assist in the truthful resolution and accept responsibility for his part. The sergeant, Blake, kept separate counsel and a firm posture. None of this was Maya's to judge. She learned it the same way the public did, through official updates and minute entries. Each time, she printed the page, schemed it once, and placed it in the folder without comment. She never forgot that she was both witness and judge, but never in the same hour. Her own interview with the Conduct Commission went like clockwork. She wore a gray suit and carried a binder marked with tabs. The chair asked simple questions, Maya gave simple answers. She explained the rotation system, the consent on the record, the narrow tasks she handled, the instant transfer. She spoke exactly as she had written. When the chair thanked her, she replied, "Thank you for guarding trust. It is everyone's job and no one's shortcut." On the walk back to chambers, she felt lighter, not because people now agreed with her choices, but because the parts of the system had looked at each other plainly and found the seams held. In court, she handled a long landlord-tenant calendar on a rainy Thursday. At noon, her clerk slipped her a note. The other judge had set a plea hearing in the officer's case for the following week. Maya nodded and went back to the case in front of her. A tenant with a fixed income needed a payment plan. A landlord needed assurance that the building would be respected. She spoke to them as neighbors, not enemies, and wrote an order they both could follow. The plea hearing took place on a bright Wednesday. Maya was not in the room. She was on the 6th floor, finishing a calendar of traffic matters. Later, she read the public summary. Blake had pleaded no contest to an official misconduct charge and resigned from the department. He received probation, community service, and a requirement to attend training on bias and de-escalation as part of a broader remedial plan. Carver had pleaded to a lesser count tied to failure to intervene, accepted a suspension without pay, and agreed to testify truthfully in any related review. The no-contact order remained in place, so there would be no apology said to her in person, and that was fine. Court is not a theater for private relief, it is a place for public clarity. There were reactions, of course. Some said the outcome was too soft. Some said it was too hard. Maya said nothing. She took the bus home that day and watched two middle schoolers trade a bag of chips and argue happily about a video game. A woman, tired from a shift, fell asleep against the window and woke with a small start just in time for her stop. The bus rolled on. Life rolled on. In the weeks that followed, the department announced changes. Supervisors would now review every stop made for minor equipment issues, with a random audit each month. Officers would receive refresher training on tone, commands, and steps to slow down routine stops so they did not turn into something tense for no reason. Body camera policy was updated to include short pre-stop narration when possible, the who, the why, the what. The city council did its part, too, by asking for quarterly public numbers on stops, including reasons and outcomes, so people could see patterns in daylight. None of this erased what had happened. It was not meant to. It simply built a better fence around the place where it happened, so fewer people would fall. A small ceremony at a community center recognized everyday acts of care, a crossing guard who stayed late in the rain, a nurse who organized a free blood pressure clinic, a librarian who started a homework table, and Rena, the traveler with the backpack who had lifted her phone for the sake of a record. Though Maya could not attend while the case was active, she mailed a note that the center read aloud, "Thank you for believing that careful truth can help a city breathe." After the case ended, Maya and Rena finally met for coffee. They sat by a window with simple mugs. Rena said, "I did not know who you were." Maya smiled. "I was a person at a rest stop. That is enough." They spoke about ordinary things, favorite road trips, good snacks for long drives, how to stay brave without growing hard. When they parted, they hugged in a quiet way that felt like a promise to keep seeing each other as neighbors first. The law school wrote again, this time with a date after the case closed. Maya went on a Tuesday evening and spoke in a small lecture room where the chairs squeaked and the projector flickered. She did not tell a dramatic story. She traced a simple path: how to disclose, how to recuse, how to write a memo that someone else can follow at 3 in the morning when the city is tired and needs the rules to hold. Students asked thoughtful questions about bias, about patience, about the gap between what the law says and how it is felt. She told them what she tells her clerks: use small words to carry heavy ideas. Keep records like you're writing to your future self. Remember that the person in front of you is not a headline. They're a person with a long day. Before she left, a student asked what courage means to a judge. Maya thought a moment and then said, most days it is the courage to be boring in the service of trust. Her niece's class invited community helpers for a morning assembly. Maya asked the teacher if it was appropriate for her to come. The teacher said yes and promised the questions would be gentle. The children sat cross-legged on a rug. A firefighter showed a small oxygen mask for pets. A dentist handed out toothbrushes. When it was Maya's turn, she did not bring a robe or a gavel. She brought a stack of blank index cards. Sometimes people think the law is a big, loud thing, she said. But the law is also this, the chance for each person to tell their side. She handed a card to a child in the front row. This is your turn, she said. We listen. Then we give the other person a turn. Then we make a plan. A boy raised his hand. What if people are mad? He asked. Maya answered, we can still use inside voices. Anger is a feeling. Fairness is a choice. On a quiet Saturday, Maya asked her mother and her niece if they wanted to take a short drive. They said yes. She got behind the wheel, and they took the same route as that long night, but for a different reason. The rest stop looked the same as always, the blue sign, the high lamps, the hum of vending machines. They parked under a light. Inside the small building, her niece bought chocolate milk. Maya's mother chose a tea. Maya bought a bottle of water and a pack of almonds, like before, not as a ritual, but because she liked them. They sat at a clean table near the window. Trucks came and went. Families stretched and returned to their cars. It felt like any ordinary stop in any ordinary week. That was the point. Her niece asked if this was the place from the video. Maya nodded once. "Are you scared?" the girl asked. "No," Maya said. "I am careful. And I am okay." Her mother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. They finished their snacks and threw away the wrappers. On the way out, her niece pointed at the night sky, pale in the afternoon light. "It feels smaller now," the girl said. "In a good way." Maya smiled. "Yes," she said. "In a good way." In the months that followed, Maya kept a small habit. At the end of each week, she opened her For the Record folder, glanced through the letters and orders, and added a new sheet, a half page with a date and a single lesson. Some were as simple as, "Write the order before the feeling fades." Some were as personal as, "Call mom before you read comments." Some were almost a joke and almost a prayer, "Eat lunch." When the folder became thick, she placed it on a shelf behind her desk between a book of rules and a photo of her niece at the book fair. On hard days, the folder reminded her that even storms can be indexed, and that clarity is a kind of kindness. People sometimes asked her neighbors, clerks, even a reporter in a grocery aisle whether the experience had changed her. She answered carefully. "It has made me more patient with other people's fear," she said. "And more strict about my own record keeping." If they pushed for more, she smiled and added, "It has also taught me that a city heals not from one big thing, but from a lot of small right things done close together." One afternoon, a man she did not recognize waited by the courthouse steps. He introduced himself as a relative of a driver who had once been stopped and felt talked down to. He offered no story for the news. He just wanted to say that the new training at the department had changed the tone of a recent stop, slower commands, a clear reason, a thank you at the end. It was still a stop, he said, but it felt human. Maya thanked him for sharing. Later, in chambers, she wrote that sentence on an index card and tucked it into the folder. It felt human. Another day brought a letter from Carver's attorney, addressed through the court and cleared by the no-contact order, conveying a brief statement approved by the other judge. Carver had completed the first part of his training and community service and would speak to new recruits about intervention. There was no flourish in the line. It sat there like a small brick. Maya read it once and nodded at the quiet weight of a next step. On an evening near the end of summer, Maya stood on her porch with a broom. The neighbor's tree had dropped leaves onto her steps. She swept without hurry. The broom made a small, steady sound, back and forth, into a tidy pile. She thought of her mother's old story about sweeping the porch instead of arguing. She thought of the bus, the rest stop, the courtroom, the letter, the class, the coffee with Rena. None of those were grand moments. They were just steps. She swept and smiled. Fairness, she had learned again, is not a mood that visits or a speech that wins a room. It is a set of choices made in plain words, with a steady hand, in the middle of a long day. When the pile was neat, she bent, lifted it into the bin, and carried it inside. The porch looked simple and clean. She liked it that way. Tomorrow would come, and with it, more small work to do well.